Do something right now. Think back to today. There was a moment, a single moment, where your mood shifted. Someone said something. You saw something. And quietly, without warning, you became a slightly different version of yourself. You assumed it just happened. It didn't just happen. There is a system running inside you that decides what you feel, when you feel it, and how intensely you react. It was built before you were old enough to have a say. No one asked your permission. No one explained what was being installed. It happened through years of small moments. Every time love was conditional, every time silence was used as punishment, every time you learned which version of you was safe to show and which version had to disappear. And it's still running. Right now. Today. Generating your emotions, triggering your reactions, spending your energy while you walk around believing those feelings are simply you. They're not all you. Some of them were never you. Beat. Music settles. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling hollow and you couldn't explain why, if you've ever felt anxious for no reason you can name, if you've ever felt the exhaustion of constantly managing how people perceive you, this video is going to show you exactly where that comes from. Stay with this. Because what comes next changes the way you see yourself. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard or sleeping too little. It comes from carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with, from spending years reacting to the world before you ever learned to simply observe it. You felt it. That moment after a conversation where you walk away feeling hollow, drained, somehow smaller than you were before. You didn't lose anything you can name. Nothing was taken from you. And yet you feel emptied. That feeling has a source. And almost no one ever looks for it. Most people move through their lives believing their emotions are simply responses, organic, automatic, honest. They feel angry and assume something made them angry. They feel anxious and assume the world is threatening. They feel the need to perform, to prove, to explain themselves endlessly to people who stopped listening years ago. And they never once question whether those feelings were chosen or installed. This is not a conversation about controlling your emotions. Control is the wrong word, and the wrong goal. This is a conversation about something deeper. About the moment a person begins to see the strings. There's a system running inside most of us that was built before we had any say in the matter. It was built in childhood, in classrooms, in the quiet accumulation of 1,000 moments where we learned what was safe to feel and what had to be buried. We learned that certain emotions opened doors and others closed them. We learned to perform the version of ourselves that received love, and suppress the version that received silence. By adulthood, the performance had become invisible. We stopped seeing it as a choice because it had always worked. Be agreeable and people stay close. Be cheerful and you're welcomed. Be small enough and you don't threaten anyone. The system hums along efficiently. And from the inside, it doesn't feel like suppression. It just feels like being a person. The strange thing about emotional control, real emotional control, the kind that happens to you rather than the kind you choose, is that it doesn't feel like anything at all. It feels like your personality. There's a specific kind of awareness that begins to surface in certain people, usually in their late 20s or 30s, sometimes earlier, sometimes never. It's not sudden. It arrives slowly, like a light being turned up in a room you'd forgotten was dark. You begin to notice things. You notice that after certain conversations, your mood changes in a way that seems disproportionate. You notice that in the presence of specific people, you become a slightly different version of yourself, smaller, more careful, more eager to be understood. You notice that you're exhausted not by events but by the invisible labor of managing how you're perceived. This is the beginning. Not an awakening in the dramatic sense. Just the quiet beginning of honest observation. And here's what no one prepares you for: once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. The awareness spreads. You start noticing it in crowds, the way people perform versions of themselves shaped entirely by who is watching. You notice it in conversations, the rapid emotional calculations happening beneath every exchange, the subtle bids for status, the carefully disguised requests for validation. You see the machinery underneath the surface of ordinary human interaction, and it is relentless and exhausting, and almost nobody admits it's there. We live in a world designed to keep emotional awareness as low as possible. Not through conspiracy. Through economics. Through the basic incentive structure of every platform, every screen, every notification that interrupts your thought before it fully forms. The modern environment is optimized for reaction. Not reflection, reaction. Because reactive people are predictable. Reactive people are easier to sell to. Reactive people click, share, argue, consume. Reflective people are unprofitable. Stillness doesn't generate engagement. So the world pumps you full of stimulation, wraps it in the language of connection, and calls it living. It creates social environments where emotional performance is rewarded with belonging and its absence is punished with invisibility. It manufactures urgency where there is none. It trains you to treat your own discomfort as an emergency requiring immediate action, and your own peace as something suspicious, something you'll get to later, after you've handled everything else. Most people never handle everything else. That's the point. When a person begins to develop real emotional awareness, something counterintuitive happens. They don't become more open. They become more selective. They start to notice how much energy leaks out through unconscious reactions, through the need to respond immediately, to defend themselves in real time, to match the emotional temperature of every room they enter. And they begin, slowly, to stop. Not from coldness. Not from detachment in the emotional sense. But from something more like conservation. An instinct that recognizes attention as a resource and begins to spend it carefully. The conscious person learns to pause between stimulus and response. Not because they don't feel things, they often feel them more deeply than before. But because they've discovered that the pause is where the self lives. That the pause is where choice exists. Everything before the pause is reflex. Everything after it is a person. This is why the emotionally aware often seem calmer to those around them. Not because less is happening inside. But because they've stopped broadcasting every internal event. The storm is still present, sometimes. But they have learned to stand in the middle of it without requiring the storm to stop before they can think. There is a particular loneliness that comes with this kind of awareness. It's not dramatic. It's not the loneliness of isolation. It's the loneliness of seeing something clearly that most people around you have no language for. You stop being able to fully participate in conversations built entirely on performance. You sit in a room full of people and feel a kind of affectionate distance. You can see the pain underneath the jokes, the fear underneath the confidence, the longing underneath the indifference. You see people working so hard not to be seen. And you love them for it, and you grieve it, and you cannot explain any of this without sounding unbearable. So you become quieter. Not closed, quieter. You stop over-explaining yourself because you've realized that the people who require endless explanation will never truly be satisfied by it. You stop arguing to change minds because you understand that most arguments are not about ideas at all, they are about emotion, about identity, about the deep human terror of being wrong about who you are. You stop needing to be understood by everyone, which is terrifying at first. And then, gradually, it becomes one of the most peaceful things you have ever experienced. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to be governed by it. It does not mean you stop caring. In many ways you care more, because you're no longer spending half your energy managing the performance of caring. It does not mean you stop being affected by things. Awareness makes you more sensitive. Not less, but it changes what you do with that sensitivity. Instead of reacting, you receive. Instead of defending, you observe. Instead of demanding that the world become less painful so that you can finally rest, you learn to rest inside the world as it is. This is the transformation that no one talks about because it does not look like a transformation from the outside. There's no announcement. There's no sudden confidence or charismatic shift. It's quieter than that. It's a person washing their dishes and feeling, for the first time in years, completely at peace with the silence. It's a person in a difficult conversation noticing their own anger and choosing, consciously, what to do with it. It's a person realizing they haven't thought about what anyone thinks of them in 3 entire hours. Small moments, accumulating into a different kind of life. The version of you that was emotionally controlled, that reacted before thinking, performed without choosing, confused other people's emotional weather for its own, that version was not broken. It was doing exactly what it was built to do. It was surviving. But there comes a point where survival is no longer the goal. Where you want something quieter. Something that belongs to you. Not the emotions you inherited, not the personality you assembled from other people's approval, but the steady, unhurried presence of your own attention, turned gently toward the truth of what you actually feel and who you actually want to become. That's not control. That's freedom. And it begins the moment you stop reacting long enough to notice you have a choice. Wait. Don't scroll yet. You just watched this entire video. That means something. Most people clicked away in the first 30 seconds. You stayed. And that's not an accident, something in you already knew it needed to hear this. I want to ask you to do one thing before you leave. Not subscribe. Not like the video. Something smaller, and more important than both of those things. Go to the comments right now and write one single word. The one feeling this video brought up for you. Just one word. Drained. Seen. Quiet. Empty. Aware. Whatever is sitting in your chest right now. Because here's what most people don't realize. Naming a feeling even in one word, even anonymously, even to strangers, is the first moment of real emotional ownership. Your brain has been carrying that feeling without a label. The second you give it one, something shifts. Quietly. Permanently. That's not motivation talk. That's how emotional processing actually works. And if you want to go deeper, if you want to understand exactly how this emotional system was built, how it controls your relationships, your energy, your sense of self, subscribe. Because the next video picks up exactly where this one ends. But first, that one word. Comments. Right now.